the Comic DF.
What is up, you guys? It is your girl, the Karmic DF, back to you again with another video. This time, we're going to talk about how labels actually stifle our identity. And I'm talking like the full spectrum of labels. So you can go as far as like, I am depressed, I am mentally ill, to I am a Democrat, I am a Republican, to I am, this one's popular lately, INFJ, ENFJ, whatever those are. And I'm not disrespecting, I'm simply saying. What we're going to get into is the psychology behind why we, quote unquote, need these labels and what it's actually doing, how it's stifling us from figuring out who we are, which is in fact why we subconsciously want these labels to begin with. So if you're someone who's trying to like figure out who you are, understand your place in this world, and you have a habit of being like, okay, well, I am this and I am that, then this is the video for you. It's going to be a little psychology oriented, so bear with me here. But by the end of this, you'll be like, oh, I didn't realize how I was still putting myself in a box and limiting my ability to become whoever it is that I want to be. So again, this is not to call it like a negative thing. We can all fall into labels, you know. There are labels that fit everybody. It's how we let them kind of take over our life to an extent of not even actually realizing that it's not who we are. It's just a box that we can like check off that sort of describes us, but again, hinders us from figuring out the complexity of us, because we're a lot more complicated than the labels that we fit. So if you're ready to figure out who you really are, no strings attached, no box to fit in, just who you are as a soul level, then we're going to get into why this is keeping you from figuring that out so that you can figure out who you are. So if this resonates in any way, then please stick around, hit like on this video. I appreciate it so much. Leave a comment down below if this helped you. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, let's get into it. I feel like I should start with an example that most people will understand, just so you can get a kind of idea of why labels are problematic. But we're not going to hyper focus on this one. It's just one that everybody can kind of sort of understand. So especially if you live in America. And if you don't, you probably still know about it because America's on freaking everybody's television. But anyway, Democrat versus Republican, right? Like that one's a really obvious one. And back when I identified as one or the other, I won't get into it, I leaned on that very heavily because those were my people, you know what I mean? And you kind of have an exposure to it as well if you live in a state that already identifies as that itself. And so you might grow up into it and you might not even agree with some of the principles behind it. I mean, how many people identify as a Democrat or a Republican, but couldn't honestly tell you every single thing, like I'm seeing bullet points in my head, every single thing that side stands for? Because in reality, the problem is life is not black and white. It's really complex, and so are we. And so to put yourself into a box hinders you from seeing the perception of other people, seeing where other people are coming from, and also you're limiting yourself to what your beliefs are. And I feel like the only way to do this is to tell what I used to be. And so I used to identify as a Democrat, and I lost a lot of friends per my doing because I couldn't stand Republicans and their misinformation and blah, blah, blah. And mind you, social media has already admitted that it panders to what you want to see. So what you're seeing on Google in terms of politics is what you are more than likely to click on because they want you to be a consumer. So they're not going to show you the good of a side that you don't resonate with. And so I would lose really solid, could have been solid friendships because I was like, oh no, I can't deal with you because you obviously hate everyone that's of color and you obviously just don't believe in women's rights and just all of that. And it spirals and it gets ugly because, again, we're leaning into this black and white thinking. It's this or that. It can't be anything else. And it reminds me of like, I'm being brought back to like high school and like middle school where it was like we voted for a president, right? And it was like, I will get you soda machines in the lunchroom. And they never got us soda machines, right? And it's just like, it's pandering to what we want to hear, and then nothing ever changes, right? It's on both sides. Nothing ever changes. You could argue with me in the comments all you want. Nothing ever changes. It's like they flip-flop. It's like blue fails, and then red comes in, and they screw something else up, and then you know what I'm saying? And so when we identify as these, we hold ourselves back from what else we could be. We could be more than that. You know, I had a really hard time because as I was learning more, trying to figure out the other side, I realized that I'm pro guns. I totally believe that people should have guns, but I was a Democrat. And then the Democrat friends of mine were like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. And now the people that are supposed to be my people aren't my people because I have a difference of opinion. Do you see how putting yourself into a box, no matter what box that is, hinders you from making connections with other people? Like, think about high school, for instance. Another great example. When you're in high school, if you're popular, right, you can't talk to the nerds. If you're a jock, you can't hang out with the gothics. You know what I mean? Like, but in high school, for me, that was really weird because I've always been weird. And so, like, I was friends with all forms of groups. And that, like, really angered the popular kids because it was like, pick a side, pick one. Why can't you just pick one? And it was like, because I want to experience all facets of life. I don't want to limit myself to one box. And we don't realize that every single label is an inability for us to figure out who we are. It's us clinging to something so that we feel like we're a part of something. Think about, like I said, high school, when we are trying to fit in instead of just being ourselves because we don't know any better, right? And so at least millennial area I can speak of, era, where it was like, if you're cool, then you have to wear these $30-something t-shirts that say Abercrombie and Fitch on them. And that didn't make any sense to me because that was stupid. And so I just, sorry if you did that. But it's holding us back from figuring out who we really are. It's really just, if I were to sum it up, these labels are what we use to fill a void because we are trying to figure out who we are. And when we can't figure out who we are, we use these labels that really helps us figure it out. Like, this is why it's not bad, for an example. I research for fun. I'm a big nerd. I can't help it. And I had come across a term during my research. I believe it's demisexual, where you can't get intimate with someone unless you're emotionally invested in that person. And I was like, holy crap, yeah, that's me. I've never been able to do like the whole casual encounters unless I was like drinking or something, because I need that emotional stimulation. I need to know that it's going somewhere. I need the mental stimulation. I need to know that we click at a mental level. And so when I found that label, I was like, oh, okay, that kind of defines where I fit in that category, but I don't really call myself that. I'm just a complex human being, because when we do that, we limit ourselves to, who am I going to be next year? Who am I going to be 6 months from now? We are always growing and changing. And when we do these things where we're like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, and then we get fixated on it, once it's time for us to grow and evolve, we might not necessarily fit those things. And so it makes it harder for us to walk away from it. Like, I used to be extremely extroverted. Like, I was someone that people always just gravitated towards. Like, I'm a Leo. It's in me to just be loud and bold. And I have a Gemini moon, so I talk a lot. And so it was easy for me to be like the person that just led the crowd. I don't know why, I don't know how, probably because I'm a healer. That could have something to do with it. But then I became more spiritual, and then I realized that my energy was sacred and precious. And so then I ended up becoming more introverted. And again, it's like, you have to realize that we change and we adapt and we evolve, and that if we cling to these labels, we limit our ability to be who it is that we are, which is multifaceted, which is many different things. We don't have to fit into a box. And though labels seem like they're not that deep, well, look at how quick social media can turn us against each other because we define ourselves by these labels. I mean, how many people right now, where some people are diagnosed ADHD, but a lot of people are claiming that they're ADHD because they fit the standard of not being able to focus, when in reality they can't focus because they're too busy running away from themselves. This is where these labels become problematic. It holds us back. And then we use that as an identifier to live in trauma, to live in things that we don't want to work through. And so it's like, oh, I can't do that because I have ADHD and you weren't even diagnosed. Or even if you were diagnosed, maybe it's not that you can't do it. Maybe it's that you don't have the proper tools and you need to learn about it. It's the fact that we lean on these to our own detriment. That's the point of why labels hinder our ability to actually figure out what our identity truly is. Here's one that's really simple and kind of lame, but it's a good example because a lot of us get thrown off by this question if we are more than just one genre. But what about the question of like, oh, what type of music do you like? When I can't do surface level conversation, so this one's already hard for me, but maybe it's not hard for normal people. But I hate that question personally because for me it's like, all right, like if we're gonna be technical, I lean towards my favorite genre being more of like 90s to early 2000s R&B and hip hop. But I'm a little more complicated than that. I can't honestly fully answer that question, and it irritates a lot of people because for them it's just like, why can't you pick one? Why can't you just like country? You just like rock and roll? You just like this? Who's your favorite artist? Why don't you listen to all their music? When in reality, I prefer songs over artists. What is it that's moving me? Oh, I feel that, and so I'm going to listen to it. And so I've had a lot of issues with people over that one question alone, because the moment I hear that question, I'm like, it's complicated. So who are we? We are the accumulation of all of our experiences up until this moment. And we get to decide what that looks like for us. We are literally stardust. We are complex, multifaceted beings, but our mind wants an explanation, and there's nothing wrong with descriptor words till we start letting it become our identity, who we think we are fundamentally. When we decide that, it stifles our growth to be open to new because it doesn't fit the box we created to define ourselves in the first place. Sometimes I want to sing Cardi B and yell about how men ain't shit. And sometimes I want a good country song to bring hope and joy back into a bad day. Sometimes I want to put on Yanni and sit in silence while I feel each note from the classical piece. My point is, life is not black and white, this or that. You are so much more. Another quick example, because this one shows how sometimes these labels can actually be telling you about yourself. And so when I was younger, into adulthood, into about around 30 years old, and I'm about to be 32, I was big into horror movies, paranormal, but like dark stuff, and like true crime. And I always hated like Marvel movies. I hated Disney. I hated all of it. I made it my identity. I was like, I'm not going to watch that. That's so lame. Like people like that are just so lame. Like I could never. And what I realized was I was so disconnected from my inner child. And so because I had learned to be an adult very early on in age, I turned off anything that would bring me joy in a childlike way. So like I didn't like holidays, for instance, and that was part of my identity. I hated holidays. I was like, oh, I'm anti-Christmas. You know, I hate it. It's just a reason to like spend a lot of money, and it's corporate America and yada, yada, yada. But what I wasn't realizing again was that this was actually telling me about the fact that I felt robbed of my childhood. I felt robbed of the experiences that I saw on TV of these loving, connected families with lots of money that didn't have a lot of worries. And so I turned that childlike part of me off. And the past couple of years, I actually gave Marvel a chance, and it turns out I absolutely love it. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's great. Makes like I'm smiling just thinking about it. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's joyful. I relearned how to love Christmas. It's still a work in progress, but do you see how labels can constrain you from actually figuring out who you are, or hold you back from the fact that you might not fit a label? What we're doing essentially with all of these labels is we're going, I don't really know who I am. And so I'm going to pick this label and I'm going to put it into my box. And I'm going to pick this label and I'm going to put it into my box. And I'm going to pick this label, put it into my box. And now I know who I am. Like, think about a job interview or like a first date or something. And someone's like, who are you? And you immediately either pause because you don't know how to answer the question at all, or you go to your hobbies like, oh, I like music, and I work at this company, and I'm a mom, or I play music, or I like music. Oh my God, that's a big one. When someone asks who they are, I like music. It is like, dude, you don't know who you are at all. That's the point. We all have been trying to figure out who we are because we're in such a divisive society right now. So we don't feel safe to be a part of a community. And so we design it so that we fit into one instead of being who we are, which again is way more complex than just, I fit this, I fit that. I am a Democrat. I am a Republican. You might be 50% Democrat, 25% Republican, 25% undecided. You might be 100% undecided. Who knows and who cares? The problem with labels that I have, that's going to wrap up this whole video, is that don't let it define you to the point of holding yourself back, because chances are most of the labels that you subscribe to, you might grow out of, you might not actually be. You might just think you are in this moment. And then if you decide to change, you might have some worry about it, because then you're like, oh my God, like, I remember when I decided to like come out, because that's how serious it is nowadays, and say that I no longer resonate as a Democrat, and I lost a lot of friends that were Democrats. And it was just like, are you kidding me? Because that's how hard we grip to these labels. Because again, we don't know who we are. We have not been taught as a society to go within and figure out what we really like, who we really are, without eyes on us, without worrying about, well, will people like me if I don't subscribe to that? You know, like, I used to be the girl that was always at the bar. I was the woohoo girl. I was big into karaoke, and that's what I was known for. But then I reached a place in my life where I didn't want to drink anymore because it was ruining my life. But I also didn't want to go out anymore because I didn't want to be up until 2 in the morning and feel like crap the next day. And I didn't want to drink caffeine and feel like crap and have all this anxiety going through my body and then just laying around. And I was changing. And so I didn't subscribe to the things that I once subscribed to. And it made a lot of other people uncomfortable as well, which is the whole point of this. Is it's this nasty circle of, we don't know who we are, so we're picking these words to help describe us so that we can figure out who we are, when in reality, we are a mixture of a lot of things, and none of us are meant to fit into a box, but we do it in order to feel safe and to feel like we're a part of something. Because we don't feel like we're a part of something deep down, because something in us is missing. And so we try to fill that void with these labels. Late entry, but for some reason I forgot to bring this one up. I am depressed, I am mentally ill, I am anxious, I have social anxiety, all of the above, right? It's not that you don't have those things, those issues, but what the problem then becomes is we cling so hard to that we hold ourselves back from healing, because it'll be like, for instance, and I'm coming from experience, I have social anxiety, and so therefore I don't go out. And instead of living in that, we need to start going, well, why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Why do I have this disorder? And then digging into the subconscious mind to going, oh, this comes from this, and this is what I need to heal. This is what I need to target in order to move forward, so that we stop identifying as anxious, depressed. There are a lot of labels in my own folder that I no longer correlate to, because I wasn't depressed. I was sad over traumatic events in my life. And that, again, is one of those things where it's like we identify so that we feel like we're understood, but in reality, it's just kind of this word that we use, but we need to do bigger deepening of the understanding of ourselves in order to release us from these shackles of the mental health issue. I mean, 1 in 5 adults in America alone has mental health issues. That's 20%. That is a crisis. So when we cling so hard to these labels, these names, in order to understand ourselves, what we're actually doing is stifling our ability to grow and evolve and look at ourselves truly, so that we can become the version of us that we truly want to be, and that makes us happy. So I'm going to wrap this video up here because I can go on and on about labels. But what I want you to really take from this is that I want you to ask yourself, who am I? And then see what comes up for you. And then notice, is that really who I am? Or is that descriptor words that I found best describe who I think I am? And what you'll notice is that, again, it's you checking off boxes to help, like, what I'm seeing is like a pie chart almost. And it's like, okay, this makes me whole. And now if I fill in all the pieces of pie with what I am, then I feel whole because now I know what I am. I'm this and this and this and this and this. But in reality, again, like I said before, you are complex, you are dynamic, you are going to continuously change and grow and evolve. I don't remember the last time I watched true crime. I don't think it's good to watch true crime, if I'm being honest with you. I think it's more like ice cream. Have it once in a blue moon and you're fine. Watch it too much, you might end up having a lower mindset towards the world around you because you're consuming that. But anyway, it's about realizing, who am I, and getting to the core of that and understanding that you probably don't completely fit the boxes that you think you do. You might subscribe to, you might be like me where you're like, yeah, I thought I was a Democrat because, you know, I'm pro people of color having equal rights. I'm pro women having equal rights. I'm pro just everybody being treated with respect. But honestly, if you have a heart to heart with someone who's a Republican, most of them are not actually racist, and most of them don't actually want to just shoot up schools and just, it's wild the things that they make us believe so that we can cling even harder to the labels that we associate with. And so I want you to ask yourself, who am I really? And drop the labels. You can say, yeah, that fits me. It's a good descriptor word, but I am just me. That's it. You know, I'm being brought back to, and I think this is a good way to end it, is when Jim Carrey went crazy on that talk with the woman. Everybody will know who I'm talking about. You could just do a Google search. It'll be the first one that comes up, where it's like Jim Carrey goes crazy being interviewed on like a red carpet. And in reality, what he's doing is breaking down that I am not Jim Carrey. I'm simply me and you are you, and we are living in this accumulation of things that don't matter, and none of this is real. And he goes into this whole like spiel, and the lady's just like, this is awkward. He's obviously having a mental breakdown, but in reality, he's not far off. We are simply, again, the accumulation of everything that's happened up until this point, and what we decide to do with it moving forward is what matters the most. And that's where he was getting at. I am not this big celebrity. I'm simply Jim Carrey. I'm simply this person playing these roles that are not me, because I am me and you are you. And I don't have descriptor words because I don't feel like putting myself into that limited box. And that's where I'm getting with this. Notice the labels that you subscribe to and ask yourself if they can become problematic, or if you've let them be problematic, or if they've held you back from maybe getting to know people that don't fit those boxes, you know? Like, again, politics is the only way to do this, really. If you're hell-bent on being Republican, maybe try to talk to a Democrat and see where they're coming from. You might notice that you have a lot more in common than you thought you did, but because society is so hell-bent on making us fit things instead of figuring out who we are, which is complex, that we continuously go around this cycle of like, this is who I am, you can't change me, I refuse. And it's in reality deep down subconsciously because we don't know who we are. And if we do that inner digging of going, okay, some days I like hardcore rap music where I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. Sometimes I like classical music. Sometimes I like punk rock. Sometimes I want to listen to Coldplay because they have really emotional music. And you know, sometimes I want to watch suspenseful, intense, rated R movies, whatever. And then sometimes I want to watch a Disney musical. You know what I'm saying? You can be more than the boxes you subscribe to. And the moment that you realize that is the moment you realize that you don't need to subscribe to these labels. They are just descriptions and they don't define who you are. I'm going to leave it at that. If you need a part 2, let me know. But I feel like that just summed it up pretty well. And yeah, just don't let yourself get caught up in these labels, and keep your mind open to other people and their experiences and learn from them. See everyone as an opportunity to learn more about things that may not fit you at all, because you might find out that some things that you never subscribed to might be something you're actually interested in, you know? Like, I didn't realize that I'd be into Marvel, and here I am today loving something that I have forced myself not to enjoy because I thought it was weird, because everybody convinced me that it was weird, especially females. Females don't like this stuff. But if you check it out, it's actually really good. Avatar, great series. You know what I'm saying? So don't stifle who you are because you're trying to figure out your identity, when in reality, your identity is just so complex. And also, check out what I'm talking about with that Jim Carrey interview, because if you have a more open mind, listen to what he's saying and it makes perfect sense. But I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this was helpful. If I remember, I'll try to link it, the Jim Carrey speech. But I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this was helpful. Let me know down in the comments what you guys want to see in future videos, or if this helped you. Please like this video if this helped you. That helps my channel so much. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, I will see you guys next time. I love you guys so much. We're in this together, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.